Hello, this is
Hi.
Alvaro San Martin, and I am here today with Don from Singapore. This is super interesting for us. Don Fung, did I say it correctly?
Yeah, Dawn Fung. Yes.
The founder of Homeschool Singapore,
Hmm.
that is going to speak with us today in the Homeschooling Global Summit about how is it to homeschool your children in Singapore and how it has affected the whole COVID situation that has affected all of us. We would like to know how is it um, right now in Singapore and how it's evolving. So I'm very excited to be here with you, Fang. Welcome to the summit.
Okay.
I would like I would like to start by talking about before the world before COVID. I
Mm,
would like you to tell us a little bit about what's Homeschool Singapore, how does it work, what are the
mm.
kind of services that you provide to families there, and we
Okay.
will take it from there. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Alvaro.
No
Um,
problem.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Singapore. I represent a small group of homeschoolers, and we have a community called Homeschool Singapore. We have activities that we run through the year to invite homeschoolers everywhere in Singapore on board, and also to help the public understand more about homeschooling in Singapore. So we run a website. It is currently the first website you would find if you check homeschool in Singapore. We also have, we run the annual homeschool convention, we run sports day, we run a not back to school picnic at the start of the year, and we end off with a preschool graduation at the end of the year. So it's quite a lovely calendar. Um, Pre-COVID, homeschooling in Singapore was rather unknown. A lot of people still don't know about homeschooling. So we were left largely to our own, and usually people who we spoke to about homeschooling didn't know what it was or thought we were all stuck at home. I'm sure that idea is still around, um, especially with the lockdown. But really, homeschoolers get out and about a lot. We have a lot of activities, and in fact, there, we joke around and we say, the socialization could just kill us. It's so tiring. Our kids have so many friends going out, right? So again, homeschooling is a very personal choice. How much you want to socialize is up to the parent, up to the family. Some children have different learning abilities and different personalities. Not all of them can handle a large social crowd. They prefer the one-to-one customization. So homeschooling gives that family and that child some breathing space and to discover what they are good at. So before COVID, homeschooling in Singapore was, I would say, quiet, but noisy if you're in, you're an insider. It's largely an international crowd, a lot of expats, a lot of locals. About maybe I would say about 1,000 odd strong. Okay, we're not very big. I mean, our country is not very big, but for what it is, I think it is a sizable minority, especially locals who have decided to take their children out of school to homeschool.
Actually, that links with my next question that is about what are the steps that a parent can do in Singapore to legally homeschool their children? Because one of the questions that we have that it's raising right now is there are some countries that it's not even legal to homeschool your children, and right now they're in a situation of a lockdown where everyone is homeschooling. So it's I would like to understand, yeah, what's the process that a parent needs to follow in Singapore to homeschool the children?
Okay, so it depends on whether you're a local or you're an expat. So start from, if you're an expat, there are no rules. You don't have to declare, you don't have to register. The government will not spend taxpayers' money to chase after you. So really for any expat, welcome to Singapore. You can homeschool straight away without having to report to anyone.
Mhm.
I think it's a good decision by our government not to spend unnecessary money and also not to be so hard on people. And I think also because Singapore, we uh, require so much help from, I mean, we hire people from overseas anyway, and we want to be a very expat-friendly country. So obviously, we want laws that welcome different families and the ways they want to educate their own. So I think our government is astute to do that. As for locals, if you want to homeschool, the Compulsory Education Act states you must send your children to a government school or a school approved by the government from age 7 to 12. Now, if you want to homeschool, you will need to seek permission from the Compulsory Education Unit. You have to call them up for a form and you say, I would like to homeschool my 7-year-old child next year who's in primary one. And then they will follow up with you on the details. Now, the details changes slightly every year. I think what it is um, the Ministry of Education sometimes doesn't know what to quite make of us, or maybe they just don't understand what they want from us as well. So every year they have different, increasing number of documentation they want from us. And in Singapore, documentation is something everybody gets used to, but it's so heavy. So for local parents, you need to be prepared to submit substantial documentation of how you're going to homeschool your children through the primary years. The government officers will do a house visit, I think at least 3 times or twice during that 6 years, just to make sure that your child is learning. And then your child has to pass the national examinations. It's called the Primary School Leaving Examinations, PSLE, which every child at 12-year-old have to take. Now, for that exams, it's rather high stakes. Parents stressed and children stressed, and it has been widely reported in the papers that a lot of children fall feel very very down because of that high stakes. Um, it is for homeschoolers. You may not feel that stress, but you have to reach a benchmark that's higher than the lowest 33rd percentile. So that means you have to buck up and just do the work and make sure your child passes. But if your child doesn't pass on the first try, she or he has to retake the exam again next year and keep retaking until 15 years old if you cannot pass the homeschool benchmark, and then you're done.
Interesting. Do you know how this lockdown situation has affected to that kind of examination, or the practices that generally have been happening in Singapore?
Um, the lockdown has affected every person's idea of school, education, learning, and resources. Simply because everyone's movement is restricted. And when you have children at home, how are you going to access teaching? How are school teachers going to teach? The government tried to roll out an initiative called home-based learning, where school teachers prepared materials for kids to do at home, and some of it is online. It was very hard going when it first started. And now the school holidays has been pushed forward a month just so that everybody could breathe. Mm, it means that the exams get easier this year. I've seen from around the world, I think in the UK, they've just guaranteed that everybody gets a place because the exams are going to be scrapped, I think. In Singapore, they've taken some topics out. So for this year's PSLE, PSLE candidates, they would have a slightly easier paper, I think. Um, but what I think has really, really changed is people are starting to question if the way education is done in school is needs to be changed. After all, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that if you want to socially distance yourself and you're getting everybody crammed in a classroom, It also doesn't make sense that you bring the school classroom learning home and you have the parent try to do what the school teacher wants and to assist, because then the parent becomes the teacher and the teacher becomes the parent, if you know what I mean. The teacher is
Yeah.
trying to tell the, yeah. I think parents are starting to question, is this what I want? And in fact, some of them have a really lovely time with their children at home and they're thinking, can I prolong this? I know parents who write to me and ask, so how can I homeschool? I really enjoy being with my children and being at home. They love not being able to wake up early. They love the fact that they can learn at their own pace. I think I want to consider homeschooling. So one parent has decided, yes, has written a letter to the principal and she wants to try that out for her teenager. I'm seeing people shifting their mindsets about how education can be done and how there can be less boundaries and less structure and just more freedom for the children. Although the lockdown essentially means everybody does things in the house, and that's not what homeschooling is about because homeschoolers do get out and about, but just the freedom and the time you have with your children, um, the best things in life are free, isn't it? You really savor the moments you have with the most important people in your life, and you're thinking, how do I prolong this? I see my children happy. How do I make it happen more? And I think homeschooling can be one of the solutions to this situation.
That's beautifully explained. Actually, I was gonna ask you a bit more to get deeper into the challenges that you have heard about from parents in this situation, but also the opportunities and the stories that have appeared of families that have seen in this lockdown an opportunity to explore something different. So I'm sure through Homeschool Singapore, you have seen quite a few stories on this. And so would you mind sharing some of them with us?
Sure. At Homeschool Singapore, we tend to get emails from people interested to homeschool. We get about a request, I think at least 2 to 3 requests a month, asking how to homeschool, or if it's possible for them to homeschool. I think there's increasing um, knowledge that homeschooling is a viable option in Singapore, and Singapore parents are generally educated and they can find solutions and information themselves. It's just that when you've been in a school system for so long, you wonder if you can break free of that. But but somehow I don't know. The school system. Singapore is supposed to be a world-class education system, but schools are still stuck in a classroom model, one teacher to 30 kids. Um, it's not that they don't want to change. I think our Ministry of Education have really good people on board. Sorry, hang on for a while. Can we just pause this? Okay.
Yes,
Girls, try that again. All right.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think our Ministry of Education, we have good civil servants, people who really care for the children's welfare. Unfortunately, we are talking about tens of thousands of people affected by one single decision. So change is very slow. For parents, do you want to wait for a change to happen from the top, which may take years, or do you want the change to happen now? And I think Singaporean parents, they are in a good position to make quick changes because they have the resources and they have the desire. And really, if your country is, I would say, we are blessed. We're in a country without civil war. We seldom have uh, civil unrest. So that makes things a lot easier. So which means you can make decisions for your children quicker and better, and you should, because your children only have one childhood.
Definitely. That's
For
beautiful.
yeah, so
Sorry, go ahead.
for yeah, so for the for so during the lockdown, Homeschool Singapore, we did 2 campaigns. The first campaign was to help Singapore parents cope with their children at home. A lot of parents work, so they rely on schools to take care of their children while they work. And right now they have
Mm,
to work from home. How are they going to do both? Um, for some parents, it's impossible. Yeah, especially when you have preschool children and they are constantly asking for your attention.
Yeah.
So what do you do? So we had this series called Learning at Home, where we did a 20-day sharing on what different homeschooling family conducted their activities, and hopefully it gave people an idea on what they could do. But when the lockdown became more severe, where you couldn't go out as a family and only one person can go in and out to buy food, then cabin fever really affected all of us. Homeschool Singapore worked with a motherhood organization called Moms for Life, and we are doing a 30-day campaign called Parenting the Heart. We got 96 parents to share their insights on parenting during the circuit breaker, which is what Singapore calls the lockdown.
Nice.
So every day, 3 stories, and from different parents of different backgrounds, single parents, parents with special needs, parents of large families, and where they just share this is what parenting looks like. And and I tell people now, if you're thinking a lot about parenting and a lot about how you and your children are relating, to me, that is a very close approach to how homeschooling is, because homeschooling is largely a parenting journey. It's a parental decision to take ownership of the children's educational direction and to be very observant about how your children grow. And when you are observant about yourself and how you conduct, your behavior and how that impacts your children. So for me, when parents suddenly take ownership of their time with their kids, that is to me a very beautiful foundation for homeschooling. And I think that goes some way towards helping people see the possibilities of homeschooling in Singapore.
I was wondering how this also has affected Homeschool Singapore as an organization, because I'm pretty sure um, you're right now facing different challenges than before, right? It's like a kind of good challenges because it's an increase of interest. But yeah, I would love to learn more about how you and your team have managed this increase of of interest and expectations too. I am pretty sure you had to give many answers that maybe were not that clear at certain points. So yeah, I would love to hear how was that experience of managing your initiative during this time.
Okay. I think I think prior to COVID, homeschoolers, when they talk about homeschooling, they are very impassioned about it and says, yeah, homeschooling is about this and this and this. But with the lockdown, everyone's becoming more empathic because everyone's suffering. For homeschoolers, it's about holding your tongue and not being so quick to tell people what to do or what they should do because nobody's having a good time, including yourself. Homeschooling families also suffer when their jobs are affected. Some homeschooling families have lost months of income, and they they faced no support when it comes to babysitting help. Previously, when you could visit your family, you can visit your extended, grandparents, everybody can help take care of the kids. But now you have 4 to 6 kids by yourself. What are you going to do, right? All the time. Um, so perhaps something that we've learned to cope with is to be mindful that everyone has their journey, and we want to help, and we don't want to be a stumbling block. We don't want to come across as arrogant or entitled that, oh, we know this already, so look at us. I think it's more important to state very upfront, like, okay, so homeschooling is actually not being stuck at home the whole time, but I don't have this easy. Why not let's encourage one another? I'm sure you have tips and I have tips, and we can make it better. I think what Singapore has that I appreciate is this atmosphere of dialogue. It's a small country. Any little conflict can escalate to bigger ones very quickly. Um, we don't have the privilege of space, so which means that we don't have a lot of opportunities to really take stock of things. We have to make decisions very fast, and so we have to learn to calm down and speak only when we're ready to. So I think Singaporeans are learning how to um, not get ahead of themselves. And within Homeschool Singapore, we are thinking, how do we communicate and promote homeschooling within a framework that is uh, reasonable and kind and respectful of everybody during this time.
I was thinking about the parents watching this video and trying to think about um, the things that I will need to start this journey. And one of the things that I would like and I will try to do is to learn from the key learnings from more experienced parents and more experienced people. What are the things that you think families should keep in mind when they are considering homeschooling their kids? What are the key elements that they should take into account?
Okay. Here's my honest opinion, which is that the longer you want to homeschool and the more time you have to journey with your children, it is better to forget the end in mind, especially if the end in mind is an outcome tied to a certificate or a degree or anything traditionally safe in education. There is no more guarantee in today's world uh, that the institution of your choice or the program or the examination will be as useful as it was. The world is changing so quickly. New homeschooling families need to keep in mind that the beginning of their journey is just as important as the end. You know, sometimes you want to start your journey, you're thinking, okay, let's go get there very quickly. I'm going to tell you, slow down, smell the roses. You have just gotten out of maybe school situation that have locked your time um, for your kids, and now your kids have all this time to spend. Are you going to replace it with a program straight away? Slow down, you know, really, really slow down and think. Um, it is where the beginning is where you grow your foundations in terms of how you want to direct your children's learning, time and your resources. So, do you really want to be fixated on a schedule with a prescribed curriculum based on somebody's recommendation? Are you really going to shop for this thing and this thing and this thing? I mean, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So, new homeschooling families usually feel fearful, like, oh no, I need handles, I need a curriculum to know how to spend my kids' time. And I'm saying, don't don't give away your kids' time to other people so easily or other vendors so easily. I want you to enjoy the time you have with them. Really, really start to observe your children like you haven't done before, you know. Um, Take time to get used to life outside of a schooling paradigm. Don't find something so quickly to replace it. Surprise yourself. Discover your children and take notes, maybe mentally in your mind. Then open your mind to how learning could look like. So, for example, you're noticing that your children really enjoy just lazing at home and they like to bake and they like to watch TV. All right, now start a discussion on what programs you would like to discover more. Can you introduce MasterChef, a junior? I don't know what the programs are for cooking, but there are lots of just great options out there to discover and cultivate your children's interest. But if you jump ahead too quickly and try to get something to replace it, you end up not really understanding your children's natural abilities and pacing. And that's really what you want to get at. You want to slow down and you want to smell the roses. You want to take it one year at a time. And if you keep repeating the cycle where you build observation and your patience and the practice in understanding how children develop, you will get there with a lot of joy.
Wow, that's impressive. Great answer. I was thinking also about how are you planning to develop your homeschool community? Because right now, I'm pretty sure it's a moment of many alternatives from you. Um, how are you and your team planning and growing your community? What's the next initiatives that you have in mind? And how is the Homeschool Singapore community going to grow?
Okay, so this year I'm going to write a book about homeschooling in Singapore. It will be published probably next year. We're going to also grow a homeschool library with different and gather all the resources that are useful for homeschoolers in Singapore, and it will be shared with the public so that anybody who's interested in homeschooling resources can have access. I think the library is always a great idea. I think learning should be open source. You know, everybody can have a say, and everybody should, I mean, resources should just be shared. So I hope to build deeper relationships with existing families in the Homeschool Singapore community, because as we build deep together, you have the tenacity and the teamwork and the right dynamics for building bigger projects outside, because you can't do things by yourself. So I want to build good teams so that we can build bigger projects that help other people more. I want to see homeschoolers work with community partners to help disadvantaged individuals. As much as homeschooling is difficult, at least your children have your time. How about children that don't have their parents' time? How about children who really need a leg up? What can you do for those people in your neighborhood? I think as homeschoolers, we are in a privileged position where we understand how children develop, and we should allow ourselves to reach out to those people who need our help. Um, I think I believe in education reform because I think it begins in the heart. It starts with the question, how can I help? Um, Education is essentially a contested concept, which means it's something we will never fully agree on. And that is okay. As long as homeschoolers have a stake in that conversation, we will help make education better, especially in Singapore for all.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end this interview. I think the message is very clear. I think you have showed well what's particular about Singapore. What are the things that you're working on? How is your community facing these unexpected times? And how is the future looking like for you? I really love the passion that you send in your messages, and I like that you are building something slowly and strong that is, I'm very sure, helping a lot of people. So thank you very much, Don, for sharing this with us. And we will be happy to share the contact of Homeschool Singapore with the attendees of the summit so they can get in touch. And yeah, hopefully you inspired many parents to start their journey in their homeschool and self-directed learning journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.